The life of Edgar Allan Poe is interesting and a little bit strange, but not nearly as strange as the things that Edgar Allan Poe wrote. Let's learn a little bit about the poet, the short story writer, Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Poe was born in Boston on January 19, 1809. He experienced a harsh childhood, punctuated by the death of his mother and abandonment by his father. His parents were both actors. His father left when Poe was 1 year old, and his mother died of consumption, which we now call pulmonary tuberculosis. It's a disease of the respiratory tract which causes you to cough, and often cough up blood. With no parents to look after him, Poe moved into the home of John Allan, who, along with his wife, gave Poe his name, Edgar Allan Poe. The Allans took care of Poe and sent him to boarding school. As a young man, Poe became engaged to Sarah Elmira Royster. He registered at the 1-year-old University of Virginia in order to study ancient and modern languages. Poe went off to college but didn't have an easy time there. His college career was limited to 1 semester because of lack of funds. Also during this time, Poe found out that his engaged sweetheart had married someone else. Along with gambling debts, Poe was devastated, and he left the university. With no money, Poe decided to join the U.S. Army, and he did so under a fake name and by lying about his age. He also began writing poetry during this time. After several years, he wanted to end his enlistment early and revealed his real name and his circumstances to his commanding officer. But the only way he could get discharged was to write a letter to John Allan, and John Allan agreed to support him if he would seek an appointment to the United States Military Academy at West Point. Poe went to West Point, but was discharged by being court-martialed purposely for gross neglect of duty and disobedience for orders. Poe was indeed a homegrown American author, and in fact, he chose a difficult time to start publishing works on his own. He was the first well-known American to try to live by writing alone, and this was a very difficult task for him. Many times in his life he found himself without money, and to resort to humiliating pleas to beg for money and other assistance from people he knew. But Poe continued to work hard at writing, and lived a very turbulent life. At the age of 26, he obtained a license to marry Virginia Clem, his 13-year-old cousin. I know. Ew. They were married for 11 years until she died, also of tuberculosis, like Poe's mother. Poe spent a life battling substance abuse and harsh critics and the turbulent world of publishing, but went on to become famous for writing many mysterious and macabre works of prose and poetry. Poe died at the age of 40, when he was found delirious on the streets of Baltimore and taken to the hospital, where he died 4 days later. People are not certain of his cause or death. Perhaps it was due to alcoholism, perhaps heart disease, epilepsy, venereal disease, cholera, or even rabies. Like many things that Edgar Allan Poe wrote about, his death was also very mysterious. If you read much of Poe's writing, one thing you'll learn is that he was obsessed with time. Time and timepieces appear in a few of Poe's short stories. In The Devil in the Belfry, the good citizens of Vondervotteimittis meet daily at noon for no other reason than to synchronize their watches with the clock in the belfry as it strikes 12 noon. I bet they say to each other, Wonder what time it is? Oh, it's 12 noon now. In The Pit and the Pendulum, a prisoner looks toward the ceiling of his cell and sees a painting of Father Time, from which a pendulum in the shape of a sharp scythe swings methodically, lowering ever slowly toward him. In The Predicament, Signora Psyche Zenobia makes her way to the steeple in a Gothic cathedral, where the minute hand of a giant clock slowly decapitates her head throughout the story. And in The Masque of the Red Death, Prince Prospero and his 1,000 nobles retreat to an abbey for a 6-month refuge against the plague, the Red Death. Toward the end of the quarantine, the prince throws a magnificent masquerade ball, with continuous dancing and merriment that stops only hourly for the ominous chiming of a large, imposing ebony clock. By the way, Poe died in 1949 in Baltimore. He was found on the streets, in sad shape and wearing strange clothes. Some 40-plus years later, the Baltimore Sun had a contest to name the NFL franchise which had just relocated from Cleveland to Baltimore. 25,000 fans voted for Ravens because of the historical significance of the poet who died there and his poem, The Raven. And the mascot on the sidelines of the Baltimore Ravens games is called Poe, which has nothing to do with anything you're doing right now. So go read some Poe. No, really. It's time to go read some Poe before it's too late.